And it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Jerry O'Reilly, and he's our district secretary. Our district extends all the way down to the Dane County-Broward County line. It encompasses 5 counties, 5 MPOs. Brian and I reviewed this with a fine-tooth comb, as we are wont to do, and Jim reviewed the non-motorized section, and we're very pleased with it. There's a lot of good stuff in here. It's a pretty well-funded work program, as we've come to expect from DOT, and it abides by our priorities in lockstep, so I'm happy with that aspect of it too. But we'll ask Mr. O'Reilly to make some introductory remarks and then introduce his team.
So my name is Jerry O'Reilly, as introduced, thank you very much. District Secretary for District 4 DOT, and I'm happy to be here. Been here for several years. Maybe first thing I'll do is what you recommended, which was introduce my team. So we have a lot of people here. You're used to seeing Mira and Christine from our planning office, but we do have a lot more here today. Leslie Weatherall, Sabrina Aubrey is here, Ash Wallace is here, Katie and McLean. Katie, identify yourself. And they're all from the program management office, so they're the people who build the work program, put the money together, do all that part of it, control our estimates, and that side of the thing. And then all the way on the other side of the office, trying to make sure he doesn't associate with the production people, is Tom Marine from the operations office. So Tom is a long-term DOT employee, handles all the maintenance side of our business, and if we had 10 more Tom Greens, our roads might be in better shape, but he does a great job. And if you need direct impact or direct contact with the DOT locally, then who to contact? It's Dan Hayden, who's our operations engineer, and Tom works directly for him in the maintenance area. I did want to say a few things. I have a couple of slides here on some of the projects that have finished over the last year. You know, a couple of things going on at the DOT, maybe since I was here last time. Definitely some changes at the DOT. We have a new secretary since I last presented. So a new secretary, but it's an old face. Kevin Thibault worked for the department a couple of times in the past in his career. When he probably started after I did, I guess, but he was a director in the Turnpike. Worked in the Turnpike, went out to a consultancy firm, came back, worked in central office as an assistant secretary to Stephanie Kopalousis when she was the secretary. And then he went to a consultant firm again, and now he's back with the DOT. So from my perspective, it's really good because I know him. I think from the state's perspective, it's really good. He's an engineer, he knows the transportation business, and he's doing a good job from my perspective so far. He's brought a renewed focus on certain areas. So if he was standing here in front of you, he would talk about what he sees as the vital few things the department needs to concentrate on. So no big surprises. Safety is the number one thing we'd always want to focus on. Mobility of people, mobility of goods, mobility for bicycles, mobility for pedestrians, improved mobility though. Innovation. And this comes to saying that the department needs to find better ways, quicker ways, different ways of doing our job more efficiently. And there's a big focus on innovation in the department. Has been for a while, but it's definitely a renewed focus now. And the other one is more inside baseball for the DOT, but it probably affects your agencies just as well. We use the term ART, but the idea of attract, recruit, and train and retain staff. So probably similar to your agencies, we lose a lot of people to the private sector, we lose a lot of people to the local government, we just lose a lot of people. So trying to keep a good, solid staff together as our work program continues to grow. And if we're going out with, at any given time, anywhere from a small project might be $1 million to a large project might be $50 million or $100 million, you need experienced people making decisions who are controlling consultants who are working on those jobs and controlling the construction of them and the maintenance. So we've put a focus on how do we retain the people we have and how do we hire good quality staff and train. So they're the focus areas he's brought, and it's been good for the department. In safety, we've been doing a lot of talking about how do we move the needle, how do we improve. So the department, anytime you talk about safety, and I've talked to you about it before, you talk about the 4 E's. So you've got engineering, you've got education, you've got enforcement, and emergency response. So the department can impact all of those E's. And clearly in our day-to-day work, the one we have most influence over is the engineering side of the business. But with the best will in the world, you can build a dead straight road, put up all the correct signs, all the correct everything, and crashes still happen. People are distracted, people don't understand how they should be driving. You can't have a police officer and enforcement at every single intersection, on every single road, at all the time. So you're dependent a lot on the driver. At least from our initial talk, and we're thinking we need to be putting more money, so more money into the education side of the arena. You know, if you can train people when they're younger, educate people, you have a better chance, hopefully, of changing their behaviors and their habits. And a lot of the crash statistics now, it's hard to interpret them. There's no box on the crash form that says, check blocks if person was using a cell phone while this crash happened. But, you know, we do see a lot of run off the road accidents. So, I mean, why did they run off the road? They could have fallen asleep, so traditionally that would have been something you would have seen. But in an urban area where you're going to work in the morning, you're probably not falling asleep. How we educate people on these things, we're putting a focus on that, or a new focus, and you'll see more programs coming up from the department in that area. So that's kind of a big picture look. The work program as a whole, I think in your area, I think there's definitely been some very positives, probably one negative. But as a whole, the department does not have as much money as we thought we were going to have. So what does that mean? Every year, in fact a couple of times a year, statewide, there's revenue estimates done for all areas of the state government, including transportation. So we build our work program. When we built our work program last year, it was based on the revenue estimates at that given point in time, and we project how much money we'll have and how many projects can we build. Fast forward to today, the revenue estimates conference that have happened since we built the work program last have had an impact on our overall work program of about $235 million reduction. So we had built the program last year. Building a new one, there's $235 million less money for us to work with. So that's not in Indian River County, that's in the state as a whole, so that impact gets shared around the state. But not an increase. We always want to see an increase, but there hasn't been. The other impact is estimates. Construction estimates are going up. They're not going up by a crazy percentage, but they are going up. They're definitely not trending down. And the cost of land where we need to do right-of-way acquisition, in general, especially further south, is continuing to increase. So when we build our work program, we redo all our estimates, and then see what money we have and build projects. So that has impacted the program. It's had one big impact in your area. We had hoped to be telling you today, and in the paperwork you have, which was done before we finalized everything, it showed the Oslo Road interchange now in the 5th year. It is not in the 5th year. It will, in the SIS program, it will remain 6 years out. So we weren't able to bring that into the 5th year because we don't have the money. So that's a big impact. On the positive side, you'll see in Leslie's presentation that we will have added several resurfacing projects in the area. And I bring that up, not that resurfacing the road isn't important, but it is an avenue to addressing lots of other features on the road and interacting with the municipalities or the county to rebuild a corridor the way it should be. So it's always a positive when we add those projects. We also are going to be replacing the Wabasso Bridge, Sebastian Bridge. Also a different area. Sebastian Inlet Bridge. And you may have read newspaper reports about this. I don't know. I don't know if your newspaper reporter is here. You are, right? Several inaccuracies in that report.
No.
Say it ain't so.
Oh.
Yeah, surprise. Newsflash from the DOT. Inaccurate newspaper report.
She wasn't the author.
But I can maybe give you a quick overview. That project, that bridge, we inspect bridges every 2 years. We go out and do our routine inspections. That bridge we have found several years ago had some corrosion issues. We brought down the Gainesville lab, which is our central laboratory. They did corrosion testing, gave us some recommendations. They were back again in 18 doing testing. And the bridge was built in 64, 65, something like that. So it's over 50 years old. And the analysis they did said, listen, it's past rehab. You need to be looking at replacement. So that changed the bridge from its rating to being a structurally deficient rating. That's the key that says to the department, if you have a structurally deficient bridge, you must replace it. So we will be replacing that bridge. We've identified the money in the program to do the project development studies that are needed, the design. That's in the program that's before you today. And I fully expect we'll add the construction funding next year. And it takes us about 6 years. By the time you do the project development work on a project and do the public outreach, decide what it's going to look like, what height it will be, how you'll build it, all those type of things, and then draw plans. You're about 5 years, 6 years out, so we'll be adding the money for that next year. A crazy guess will be somewhere in the 50 million range if we were building it today. That type of money.
Question, I'm assuming you are coordinating with the inlet district on that, since I know they're gonna be doing some maintenance to the armoring and the rocks underneath, because they control that
So
stuff?
it'd be true that we will be coordinating with everybody on that.
Okay.
Literally, we just added this to the work program, so the money for us to even start studies, it is, what year is it in? Next year. So we'll be letting a contract, bringing people on board, and that's when that will start. For us, you know, the way you know if a bridge is safe to drive over is it's rated for a load. So you know if a truck can go over, what size truck. Nothing has changed with that in the bridge. It's all the exact same. So it's fully open, no issues with it. What we've said is we don't need to be spending big money on rehabilitating this project. We need to be looking at replacing it. And that's a structurally deficient bridge, so we need to replace it. There is also a term of functionally obsolete, which is an interesting term. So bridges can be functionally obsolete, but not structurally obsolete. Structurally, they could stand for a long time. This bridge has been functionally obsolete for quite a while. And what that means is, does it have the features you would build on a bridge if you were building the bridge today? So it's pretty simple. If you went out and looked at that bridge, I don't think it has a sidewalk, it doesn't have a bike lane, right?
No, none of it.
And so if we were building that bridge today, it'd have a bike lane and it'd have a separated bike lane, because that's the DOT standard now. And it would have sidewalks. So it's brought up to standard is my point. And it doesn't have those features today, so you can expect it to have and incorporate those type of features. But the devil's in the details, to reach out to these different agencies, to the local government. It's surrounded by the parks there, you know, so we're working closely with them on the entrance to the parks, deciding what height the bridge should be at, and how you would actually build it. And then what impact that has on people while it's being built. That will all happen when we bring these consultants on board and kick off that study. So you'll see that and hear about it and be dealing with it over the next 4 years or so, 5 years, with a view to it being replaced about 6 years from now when we get the construction done. If there were questions about that bridge, maybe now's the right time to talk about that. So that's a positive to get that in the get that started. So we get a jump start on getting the funding this year, and that just worked out because of the way the ratings was. And Hurricane Dorian, or whatever Dorian ended up being when it got here, had absolutely nothing to do with it. I was in meetings last May talking about this bridge and lining up funding. I think that's probably the main things from my perspective. I'll still be here, I can answer questions, but Leslie will go into the details a little bit more of what projects have moved and where, and what's got brought into the program.
Did you have a question?
Oh, yeah. But wait, I have more. Yeah. These are just a few slides on projects. This is an ongoing project, Sebastian Inlet Hurricane Repair. This project now was impacted by Dorian. Why was it impacted? Because we had started construction. We took the riprap out because we're putting in vinyl sheeting here as a more permanent repair. Well, we started taking that riprap you see out, and then the storm was coming. And we're like, well, it's not protected now. So we quickly brought the rubble back and put it back in again, so that if the storm did hit this area or impact it, we weren't going to wash out the road again. So that project's probably a couple of months behind, because we took the rubble out, put it back in again. We expect it to finish around October of next year. It's a $5.5 million project going on. but it will replace that rubble with sheeting. This will be a more permanent repair. 17th Street from US 1, this project finished last year around this time, a resurfacing project. But then, like I said earlier, it's the chance to incorporate newer features, newer design features. So you get a bike lane there. Massachusetts Avenue, this was one of your TAP projects. It was done by the city of Fellsmere. Excellent job, city. Recently completed, 380,000 projects. So you see there is what it looked like kind of before. And after you got the sidewalk here and a bike actually using it, which is nice. But anyway, Leslie, if you want to get into a few of the details.
Thank you, Secretary O'Reilly. Good morning, Leslie Wetherell, District 4 Program Management Administrator. Happy to be here with you today. So, as usual, I always like to show you all a map of your priorities that we're working on here in Indian River County. And just starting there at the top of the map, of course, Secretary O'Reilly mentioned it already, but we were able to fund the first piece of construction along County Road 510. That's the piece the westernmost piece from County Road 512 to, I think, 87. So we're excited we were able to get that one into the program for you this cycle. The rest of the sections do remain unfunded for construction, and we'll continue to partner with the NPO moving those forward in the future, hopefully using some innovative solutions, as Secretary O'Reilly mentioned. 82nd Avenue still continues to be under design and actively under right-of-way acquisition. The US 1 corridor, excuse me, the section there that you see in green is actively under design, and the northernmost piece is funded for right-of-way acquisition. In addition, there's the piece up there at US 1 where County Road 512 intersects, and that's funded for PD&E as well. And then we've got the piece there further to the south at Aviation. That piece is funded for design and PD&E. And all the comments I'm making about things that have been funded, with the exception of the new one that got added in, they're the same as they were in previous years, so they continue to move forward in the program. The A1A turn lanes, those are actually congestion management priorities that you all here at the MPO identify on a regular basis, and we were able to add those in. And what we're also going to do is coincide those projects with a resurfacing job that we have going on in the area. So they're actually separate projects, but because we have other work going on in the area, we'll combine them so it'll be less impact to the traveling public, and it'll be more cost effective for us to put those projects out on the street. County Road 612 is a local bridge replacement that we're partnering with the county on. And Oslo Road proper is the section of Oslo Road, of course, that is actively under design and still continues to be funded for right-of-way acquisition. The project that's not shown on there with arrows is you kind of see a scrambling of blue dots on the screen. What that is a project to partner with the county to do some signal improvements all around the county at those locations that the county, again, had identified through the congestion mitigation program working with the MPO, and asked the department to help fund. So that's kind of all encompassing of the projects that are on your priority list that we have been able to fund in the department's work program. I also always like to touch on the fact that we don't just fund roadway projects and cars and bikes and pets. We also provide funding to our transit and our airport partners to ensure that their priorities continue to move forward as well. And there are a number of projects in our work program that you'll see in the package that are for both airports as well as transit here in the community. And that wraps up what we have today here to show you. If you do have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Yes, sir.
Could you give us an update on the A1A resurfacing project in the northern part of the county through Indian River Shores?
Sure. So that's a project that is scheduled for letting this year, so current year, which is why you don't see it in the package that is presented here today. And we worked with the MPO and the local community to hear what your needs were on that one as it relates to bike and ped, which is why the project is getting ready to let, I think in the latter part of our fiscal year on that one, so that we can incorporate those elements along with the resurfacing.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
On the airport, for the Vero Beach Airport, now that they've exceeded the 10,000 passenger count threshold that changes their match dollars potentially going forward, is there any waivers or anything that could be obtained? I mean, we're like 10,124 passengers, and it changes the ratio of, I forget if it's 80-20 to 70-30, but it's a significant shift in what the local dollars have to be. Do you know any mechanisms? I've heard talk of there's a way to apply for a waiver, maybe up to 15,000 or 20, but it's hard to, you take the big airports, even Melbourne, Orlando, Sanford, they're measured in the millions, and now that we've just peaked that minimum threshold, is there any options that could be pursued for that?
I'm not familiar with what those options are, but we'll be sure to take some notes down and get back with our aviation staff and get back with Phil to disseminate that information. Mira, would you kindly take note? Yes, ma'am.
Laura Moss, Vero Beach City Council. I appreciate being on the congestion management process projects in terms of A1A. I just wanted to make you aware, our agenda actually will be uploaded at noon, but on it for the meeting next Tuesday, which will be at 3 o'clock, will be an annexation matter, and that is for property that is just north of the current city limits, and that's on A1A. And according to a study by Kimley Horn, which was prepared fairly recently, exact date June of this year, and I'm reading just one sentence. Additionally, the intersection analyses results indicate that the intersection of A1A and 17th Street operates with a failing level of service during existing traffic conditions. So according to Kimley Horn, we already have a failing level of service at that intersection. That's what I'm saying. I'm thankful we're on the congestion management process projects, but my concern is, we'll be voting on this shortly, if not next Tuesday. The plan, at least as has been discussed, is for development of this area. A1A is known to be a nightmare in season. We don't need Kimley Horn for that. Anybody who's been on it already knows that. But my question is, what do we do in situations like this where you have an annexation, you are likely going to experience development, and you already have a failing level of service? And I don't know if there's something you can do specifically about this now, or if this is a more general question that we, as an organization, NPO, need to address, because it's likely going to keep happening. Annexation issues and other matters that put a strain on the existing transportation system.
Can I piggyback also on to Councilmember Moss's question? I think if we go back 10 to 15 years, there was a proposal to make A1A 4 lanes to address this congestion, and the council at that time said, no, we don't want 4 lanes, we want divided 2-lane highway, which limits capacity. That would have been probably 15 years ago, and then when DOT was doing a project then, they only did it based on what council said they wanted. So council, I would think, would have to take an active role saying, that may have been then, but now we need to take a different approach to it.
Chair,
Yes.
I'm struggling to understand what the impact of that annexation will have on the congestion. Can you explain what your concern
Sure.
is? I don't-
We don't have
it's
the exact development plan yet.
Right.
We'll be discussing annexing it next Tuesday at the
I'm
city
familiar,
council
yeah.
meeting. But what has been stated thus far is that property, this is the old tracking station. It's owned by
And you're talking about 17th
Florida
Street?
Institute of Technology. So if you put a shopping center there, if you put condominiums there, if you put anything there, it's going to be additional traffic, and some of it's going to go south. It will definitely affect that intersection. It's not that far away.
Right.
For that purpose.
But again, I
Yes,
don't think
sir.
that's FDOT, that's basically the city of Vero Beach. Back, it was more than 15 years ago,
Was
I
it?
believe it was basically
Yeah.
the 80s. But there was a big hullabaloo, and people came up in arms. And myself, I thought that was gonna be a great project, particularly between the two bridges, which would have alleviated a lot of traffic problems. And the problems at 17th Street today wouldn't have existed today if that other project had gone through. So, you can't put that one in FDOT's pocket, that's local government's
Yeah.
decision.
I'm not looking to blame anybody.
No, I'm just
Yeah,
saying, but,
I'm not,
and again, when you talk about the length.
I absolutely am not looking to blame anybody, it's a question, but frankly, I don't even see where you would have room to go from 2 lanes to 4 lanes. I know there's eminent domain, you can take people's
The
property,
room is already
that sort of
exists.
thing.
The right of
The
way.
room exists today,
So-
and that, it existed in the 80s.
But Laura, I have a
It's
question for
pretty
you.
close.
If you took a survey of everyone who lives in the city of Vero Beach and you said, are you willing to deal with the congestion on 17th or would you like it to be 4 lanes? Overwhelmingly, the majority of people who live on the island would say they want a 2-lane road.
Oh, yeah, I'm not proposing we change that. What I'm asking for is maybe there are different things that can be done to address that 17th Street intersection.
And that's
I'm not
precisely why
looking
it was
to
the number
change
one
A1A.
priority
I
of
don't think
congestion
that would
mitigation.
be the thing to do, per se. But I think that's a question for them, really, more than for us.
Well, you fix congestion with capacity, and if you have limited 2-lane capacity between the bridges, and the city doesn't want it any more than 2 lanes, or the residents or whoever is in that area, then the congestion, you might be able to make it a little less congested, but it will always remain congested
That's
unless you
very
add
true.
lane capacity.
That's very true. I think Karen Deagle came up with the best metaphor on this. It's a rubber band, and it'll bend, but it'll eventually snap. I mean, you
Right.
will exceed your capacity thresholds, but there are things you can do to tinker with it and squeeze a little more capacity out. And we're relying on the excellent engineering of DOT when that project comes up, and it was our top congestion priority, to see if they can extend a turn lane here and there, change some signal timing, and get a little more capacity out of it.
I'd love to hear from you.
I'm ready.
Just wait for it.
That might work from everybody else, I'd like to hear from the expert, thank you.
Well, maybe to summarize what you heard, which I think is all accurate,
Okay.
you can tweak an intersection, you can add a turn lane if there's space. In this case, I believe that you can extend it a little bit, you can tweak with signals, which we've done. So we will relook at it. But at the end of the day, if you're trying to fit 2 pounds of sugar into a 1-pound bag, it doesn't fit.
I have a new metaphor.
Get to our political correct.
So no, this study, we'll look at it and analyze it. It'd be good if you shared the analysis you have. I don't think that's a DOT study, likely not.
Kimley Horn, Phil has a copy.
Probably is on step.
Yeah, we forwarded to Larry Heinowitz too.
Yeah, and this is part of one of the ones we're looking at, the intersection, so we will look and propose what we can do to try and improve it.
Okay,
But-
because even, the turning lanes, lengthening the turning lanes, I think will help, but that's, even that was requested in 20, and I know everything takes time, it's okay. We requested it in 2017. In fact, all this is being uploaded, it'll all be on the city council agenda for the next meeting. I just want, because I need to explain to the people of the city why things happen the way they do. So it was requested in 2017, and it's actually going to happen in 2023, I think was the latest information that I have. So that's a difficult concept for the average person to understand, that it takes 5 years to lengthen a turning lane. I had a lady say to me, well, why don't they just do it in the summertime while nobody's here? Well, that's how long it takes. So what I'm looking for is anything that can ameliorate it in the meantime. I know it's there, and I appreciate that, and I'm happy that it'll be done in 2023. But since we have this annexation maybe coming into play next week, I'm looking for whatever other ancillary measures that you might know about that I wouldn't know that might be appropriate.
So maybe to talk about that 5-year thing and the work program process, typically when we talk here at this meeting, the goal is to add projects to the new 5th year. So a cycle that says we want to do an improvement and you prioritize it, typically you should expect to see it added in the 5th year. Because we're looking at this from a planning perspective. It's long term. It's what are we going to be working on in the future. If you have a signal that needs to be retimed and things like that, that's where DOT will look at operational type issues, and we'll do them as quickly as we can. But you start talking about widening things or building bigger things, you need to line up the money and have it. And pretty much all the money is spoken for 4 years in a row, and then you have a 5th year where we try to add projects. That's it simplistically. It's a longer process when you want to add and spend significant amounts of money. But operational issues happen quicker. This intersection is one of the ones we're going to be looking at. So I expect we'll be able to give you input on that as soon as we have our consultants working on it. But I believe this intersection, if I went back in DOT files, has been talked about quite a lot. And we've tweaked quite a lot with the county and looked at the signal operation and how it can work. But I'll ask our folks to put together some of the history and send it to Phil so you see that and hear
Right.
about it.
Thank you.
Also, one other suggestion is something that the county did on the State Road 60 corridor from 66th Avenue to I-95. It was beyond the 5-year work plan for DOT, so the county front-loaded the money
Advance the money.
in
exactly.
advance. So the city could, you want to move it up 3 years? Write a check. That's how you move a project up quicker. That's, and then there's different recapture methods on that, but that is always an option.
That's true.
Money gets things done quicker.
Okay, thank you.
Are we taking comments from the peanut gallery yet?
We can.
Mr. Secretary,
Anybody else in the?
I want to commend DOT for the main thrust in adding bike lanes to every project, and I really appreciate that. I know the citizens do. On A1A, there is an additional of a bike lane, and the bike lane, I understand, ends at just east of Summer Place. Is that correct?
I do not know the details of that, sir, I'm sorry.
Okay,
But-
you're correct, Joe.
I believe
It's ironic.
it ends just, it's ironic that it ends right at the eastern part of Summer Place, which you can actually throw stones to the bridge. That's from Summer Place. And the bike lane would probably be most beneficial and interesting to the citizens if it was to the bridge, so that they could truly utilize the whole
Which
process.
bridge is that? Is that 17th Street or is that? Barber?
No, that's 510.
Oh,
510 Causeway.
Wapasso.
Soon to be the,
Yeah, and that's within the limits of the
A.B. Michael
resurfacing
Bridge.
job.
Yeah.
That's within the limits of their resurfacing job.
Thank you, Phil.
right, and I wanted you to deal with something you can deal with.
Yeah.
Since you're here, and it has been noted and inquired by many citizens, why the bike path would end before their subdivision and not to the beach access, or where they can actually utilize it and continue on A1A.
Yeah,
Tim?
we'll address that.
Yes, this question is
Thank you.
for Secretary O'Reilly. Under Governor Scott's administration with FDOT, there was a heavy emphasis on interstates, ports, tunnels, airport expansion. What is the change in the shift of philosophy with Governor DeSantis, and what he's looking to prioritize on a statewide kind of 30,000-foot view looking at this? Is he going to, a lot of those improvements are now, the boxes have been checked, the Miami Tunnel, other big infrastructure items. Is there any chance more money might shift back to more local projects versus these intra-state type of beneficial?
Yeah, I can't speak for Governor DeSantis on his
Okay.
priorities.
I didn't know if you had heard
Best to
anything.
talk to him, but from the DOT's perspective, we're still prioritizing strategic intermodal system projects.
Right.
And they're the main spines that move traffic, move goods. Commerce is where most of the people are. But I think you'll see in the program today, we added some projects, we're still resurfacing. We've added a first section of your project, and yeah, I think to get his direct initiative, I think you're best off.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else from the MPO? Sir, you had a question?
Yes, my name is Bob Yulovich. Leslie, on County Road 510, to let you know my background, I go back to Nick Dano's days. Okay? So, if I understand, phase one, as I refer to it, is from 512 to 87th, and then phase 2 and 3. Phase one is funded, but 2 and 3 are not.
Correct, the section from 510, 512, the intersection there
Right.
around the corner
To
to
87.
87th, I believe, is funded for construction in the new fifth year.
Okay. Specifically, as you know, there was major issues regarding the crossing of the lateral D, Sebastian River Improvement District lateral D on the bend. And I'm just curious as, what are our next steps on that phase one activity, specifically to, you know, the publication and acceptance and discussions regarding that crossing and basically any other matters associated with that. I represent folks that are interested in that very much and an integral part of that. And I would like to know, what should we expect in regards to that final design and any of the studies, et cetera?
So why don't we get your details, we'll get you in touch with the project manager, I'll ask the project manager to
Okay.
give me a call. They can lay out for you where we stand right now, when we're gonna have public meetings and workshops
Okay.
and that. So you can get it exactly, and we have designers, so we can dig into
Right.
real detail.
Thank you, Jerry. I had run into Maria recently, and she introduced me to a gentleman who said was the drainage engineer associated with that. So is Maria who I should follow up with?
Maria is the project manager.
Okay,
Maria's
thanks.
the project
Oh, no, by the way, when you started talking, I thought I was in church and I was reaching into my pocket to put more money in the basket.
Here, I have the basket.
I thought I was back in my Catholic church with my Irish place.
Okay, any other,
give money.
I can still give money. Huh?
You can give money,
Yeah.
you need money for
Yeah, hand
projects.
them the
Well,
basket.
I'm an usher though, Joe. I collect it.
Oh.
So the turnpike is also with us today, and of course collectively we are looking for an endorsement of the department's draft tentative work program fiscal years 21 through 25.
Okay. One other question, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
The discussion of the improvements of State Road 60 at Yeehaw Junction, just before the bridge that overpasses the turnpike, there's been the project kind of coordinated with Osceola County. But I drove that area a few days ago, and I was surprised to see the new mega truck stop that's there. And they were not required to put in a single turn lane, which it's a gigantic, probably 100-acre facility, and has no turn lane to the site, but then those other improvements have not. And I wondered, did they not do the turn lanes because there's a project that maybe is going to go to 441 from the bridge or something that may not have incorporated them installing a turn lane with their project?
This is Victoria Williams from the Turnpike. You could
Okay.
speak to that interchange.
Yes, thank you, Phil. There is going to be an open house that you can give this kind of feedback and sit and talk with some FDOT representatives, October 15th. It's a unique concept. It's called a drive-through open house, and it will be at the old historic Desert Inn.
Right.
The address is 5570 South Keenansville Road, that's Yeehaw Junction.
Right.
It is in Osceola County.
Yes.
But the Turnpike is providing a partner funding to enhance our roadways ramps.
Right.
We recognize, you know, with this being an important evacuation route for citizens in Indian River County, the impact in Osceola County, you know, is a big partnership with FDOT. The improvements were escalated. So the project manager will be there, they'll have some alternatives there.
Okay.
And for the Turnpike, the new center lane will help get the operations through those off-ramps. And it's at the US 441 intersection. It's going to be two 12-foot wide travel lanes and a 12-foot wide center turn lane within the project shoulders. So what we're going to see there is intelligent transportation system upgrades so that the intersection can be well monitored to move any problems quickly, that sort of thing.
So when you say 2 lanes, you're referring to 2 lanes westbound on the State Route 60 bridge that goes over the Turnpike, correct?
Correct.
Okay, good.
And that is going to also improve a little bit of the roadway up and down Keenansville, you know, State Road, US 441.
Can you share that meeting notice on the 15th
Yeah,
with
Patty
Phil,
has
so we-
copies of the invitation to it.
Oh, is it?
They're on the back table.
Sent that to
And
Pat,
we'll also
yes.
send them out
Oh, but
electronically for
And
those
is
who.
there dancing and barbecue afterwards?
No, but there's a lot of folks that would be very happy to speak with you and give you info and take your feedback. This is an important timing
Yeehaw.
to get those practice.
getting ready.
Thank you.
It's perfect timing. It looks like that, it's a navy
This
blue
is the
color.
meeting notice, if anybody else wants a copy of it.
Now, I've got copies of the Turnpike segment of our work program, if you care to have it, in the whole District 5, which is District 4 has 5 counties. And what we still have in this county is all electronic tolling. This is a regional project, removing all the toll booths. You can't use cash on the Turnpike very much longer in your county, but it will give our engineers an opportunity to look at interchanges further to help reduce congestion. And the best way to travel is going to be using some sort of prepaid toll account with a transponder. It's less expensive than the photograph being taken, toll by plate, and mailed to you. So, any questions, let me know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to clarify, so you're gonna look into that few hundred feet of asphalt with the little bicycle emblems
We
on it?
have a note to take that back.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Chair, what, last question, the Turnpike representative?
Victoria?
Turned around.
Sorry. Oh, there she is.
Well, we're talking about stokers.
And maybe I just have the odd luck of, I get about 20% of my toll passes end up, and I've had SunPass since day one. And I have the newest transponder gizmo. But I get about 20% of my passes through end up with a bill, for $2.10, whatever it is. It's easier, I found, and less time consuming to pay it than try to unravel the problem. But I don't know, is that related to the accounting shift of SunPass when they did that big migration? I didn't have it until that happened, and I bet you I have a stack of 10 that I haven't got to yet.
Well,
but
I appreciate your feedback, and I would like to work with you
Sure.
on that. With SunPass, the outside contracting with that vendor conduit, we've actually started soliciting bids to get a different vendor.
Good idea.
So that contract stipulations allowed us to do that for the unfortunate circumstance. Great question. No, you should be able to get that posted to your account with less fees and a reduced toll. What I'm going to say, though, is possibly your transponder may be conflicting. Maybe it's a type of vehicle you have it in that needs a special mounting spot.
I've had the same car for 6 years. Same.
Okay, it's not a Tesla. Sometimes they have to have it outside.
Oh, really?
A transponder. There are
I
circumstances.
think it's a Bugatti.
We're commissioners. We're commissioners, we don't have Teslas.
So that's why I'd like to have a specialist work
Right,
with
right.
you, and maybe it's just too far up into your shaded area where you put it onto your.
The big shift was during the accounting.
Yeah, all
switch
right.
over.
It's
I
very
thought you were
likely.
gonna ask her to waive your late fees.
Yeah,
I just don't want my
They
license.
would do that, definitely.
Mr. Aller,
yes.
I just have a question. So, Mr. Flesher asked you about this strip of the project, the sidewalk. How do you relay that information back? What happens at this point?
So this lady is fully responsible to have meetings and take minutes. She will go back, and in another office, we have a bike pedestrian coordinator,
And he's gonna,
and he will look at that and find out why that's missing. Then he'll look and see, is there something in the work program to fill it in? Can we fill it in? Then we'll get assigned to the project manager who's doing the resurfacing
Phil will
project.
know.
And then Phil will hound us if we don't do it. But no, so that's how we do the follow-up.
So then the follow-up will go back to Phil, and then Phil will notify.
Yeah,
Or
so we
make
take
a
the
report
notes.
back.
I'll notify the entire
Action
board in
items.
this case, it seems to be widespread interest.
Okay, I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Still learning.
Okay, so I believe we need a motion to
Move
approve.
Second?
Second, whatever.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any against? Okay, very nice. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Okay, next item is presentation of non-motorized user count program.
And let me introduce our newest MPO staff member, Jim Mann. One of the deficiencies we've always had, we're a very data-driven process here, where we do our long-range planning based on both existing and anticipated volume to capacity ratios and congestion. Same thing with our buses. We try to put them where the people need them. We count the people as they get on and off. That data has always been fairly easy to collect. Traffic counts, we've had a procedure for that, going back decades. The buses have become automated with GPS and so forth, and we have infrared sensors on each bus that counts our passengers. The big gap in our data has been bike ped data. It's very, very hard to collect. And we're kind of getting ahead of the curve here in Indian River County and initiating our own bike ped counting program, so we can answer questions like, how many people are using this facility we built? Should we extend it, such as the rail trail? And by the way, there is a rail trail extension in that last item again, so that's all very good news. Sidewalks, where are we missing sidewalks? Where do we see people missing? Where are they improvising? Because there's no sidewalk, that kind of thing. So Jim, if you want to briefly take them up to speed on some of our initiatives here.
Sure, absolutely. My name is Jim Mann. I'm one of the senior planners here for the Indian River County MPO. I'll make this quick because I know everybody wants to get to that luncheon, or a few folks do. So this is just a presentation of what we've done so far and what we plan to do and how we came up with the idea of coming up with this program and some of our innovations therein. So our bike ped counter program vision and plan. So since we've had great success with the Transport Rail Trail, we were always wondering how many people actually use this trail. I mean, we had the grand opening last November, and since then it's all been hearsay about how many users we get on this trail. So Phil came to me one day and he's like, Jim, I have a dream. So I have a dream that where we could set up some counters out there and collect some data on this trail so we can actually prove the usage of this trail, because it's all hearsay right now and that it's been a great success. So the next part of the plan that we came up with is to procure some infrared sensors. So he had read an article about an MPO out based in Arkansas that had deployed some trail counters, and they have had great success. So I reached out to that MPO. They had vetted the actual counters through other trails with other MPOs, and with the help of Mira and FDOT, we found some room in our budget that we actually procured some of these infrared sensors. So the next part of the plan was to deploy in various locations for about 2 to 3 week time frames so we can collect some data. The next portion of it, we will place them in the same locations on a seasonal basis to actually see the differences in usage of these facilities, you know, summer, autumn, spring, and so forth. So then the next portion of the plan, we were going to collect the data, analyze the data, and use the data to either show that we need some future improvements on this facility, a facility is warranted in this area, and to basically show some of the numbers, and we could use this for future grant applications. And since then, FDOT, they started a program, I believe last year, that they came up with a short-term loaner counter program. And what they do is they actually loan counters out, pneumatic tube style, to count bicycles on certain facilities that are already in place. So we're working with them right now, and we're going to have a possible alliance that we can use our infrared sensors along with their pneumatic tubes, because they can only count bicycles. We can count the overall number, do some math, and we can have a difference in between, you know, bicycles and pedestrians on that facility. So this is the counter program in play. I'm a product of my own destruction. I've created a future trailblazer. You see my son there on the left-hand side. He does his own stunts according to his shirt. So he came out there one night or one day to help me, you know, collect the counters, and he loves it now. And every single time I put on the bright neon shirt, he's like, "You going to the trail, Daddy? I want to come too." So it's a great thing. I mean, there's two positives in this program that we have created. And you see on the right here, this is the actual counter that we procured from a company called Trafix. So with this counter, it actually does an infrared sensor. It's got a 20-foot range. It comes with a 5-year subscription to their actual database. The database is where you can actually upload the data. It analyzes the data, and creates like charts and stuff like that you can display and utilize for future improvements. So this was the first portion of our counter program. We decided to do the Transport Rail Trail because of the popularity, and we just wanted to see what kind of numbers we were going to get. So the first deployment site we used was the new I-95 pedestrian overpass. We actually used about a quarter mile west of where the entrance to the new paved portion was from the North County Pool. And we actually used an older portion of the trail on one of the wooden pedestrian bridges is behind the new self-storage facility located in Sebastian. So here are some pictures of us installing these counters. As you can see, on the left-hand side, that's the pedestrian bridge over in Sebastian along the milled portion of the trail. We kind of hit it on there, and then we did the overpass in the center. And then on the right-hand side, you see us, that was the only tree that was available to us that actually had the distance requirement. So if you go out there, whatever the tree that is closest to the trail, that's the tree we're going to be using. I'm not trying to hide it. So here's the data that we actually collected. So the blue portion of this graph actually represents the I-95 overpass. The black portion of this graph is the North County Pool entrance area about a quarter mile to the west. And the green portion of this is actually the wooden trail behind the self-storage facility. As you can see, there is a pretty clear indicator of when this trail is being used. I mean, given this was July and August, you know, some of the hottest months of this year, and you can actually see with this, I actually collected the weather data of this. This was really during the times when you saw the aggression of usage here, is when we were having some like monsoon rainstorms. And as this being an outdoor facility, a lot of people didn't want to use it at that time. So we will redeploy these back in probably mid-November to actually gain some more numbers when it's a little cooler. And to break it down, these are the days of the week. Which days we see more usage and all of that.
So we're averaging 100 people a day. That's pretty good, 90.5. And that was in July with thunderstorms, with humidity at 150% and whatever else. So, and out of season.
Yeah, exactly, out of season. So just imagine the numbers when we redeploy them to these same locations in season. So this right here just justifies the continuation of this trail. More of, not so much of recreational use right now, but it could eventually be a community use between the city of Ellesmere and Sebastian. To talk a little bit about the counter loaner program that FDOT is doing, this was a field visit. I caught Eric Katz and Joey Gordon. They're from the analytics department up there in Tallahassee. They came down and checked out the actual site locations where I had the infrared sensors, and they loved it. They love this trail so much that they're actually planning on possibly putting a continuous counter at the overpass section where the pergola goes over the overpass and the bridge. So the way we got in touch with FDOT about this, I would like to thank Larry Wallace, but he cannot be here today. He actually got us in touch with Tallahassee about this, and we filled out a survey of some of the locations we would like to see some of their bicycle counters so we can gather some data for future improvements and grant funding. So what they do is, as I said earlier, they use the pneumatic tubes for their counter program. We have to enter into a memorandum of understanding to use, maintain, and redeploy the counter systems. What they'll do is they'll bring the counters down to show us how to install them, how to maintain them, and then whatever schedule they have for our portion of the district, we'll go out, pick the counters up, and redeploy them to the next location depending on the schedule. They want to do is they want to count during the high peak in season, so most likely we will not see these until probably maybe springtime of next year. And we came up with an idea that we were going to, as I reiterated earlier, that we were going to use our counters along with their pneumatic tubes so we can get an overall number, not just bicycle counts. So on to the next location for our counter program. I actually have a couple of counters out on College Lane in front of the Charter High School right now. We realize there is a crosswalk there, but we would like to see some future improvements for that crossing. So we went ahead and deployed our 3 counters out there to kind of gather some numbers, because I guess they do like a limited release for students that they can walk over to the commercial site by the Home Depot, Chipotle, and grab some lunch or whatever they feel like doing. during their time. And we wanted to maybe see some improvements at this intersection. And this was all, it came from our traffic engineer. They wanted to see something improved in this area, so I said, we'll work together and we'll get some numbers. After I go and pick them up today, I'm going to redeploy them onto the Barber Bridge. I'll put them on the north and south sides of the sidewalk so we can actually get the usage numbers out of that. Now, I mean, this is probably one of the most recreationally used areas in the county, so we would just like to see, you know, what kind of people and how many people are using this. So while FDOT was down doing their site visits, they contacted Marlin Engineering, who is actually doing a study of commuters to actual transit stops. And we showed Eric Katz, who you saw earlier, our transit hubs, and they loved them so much that they put a good word in to Marlin Engineering, and we actually got an actual study that they're going to be using in our area, and we're 1 in 5 in the state. So they're actually going to go out there, either do manual counts or install their own counters to figure out where these people are coming from to commute to the transit stops, where they're going as they arrive at the transit stops, if they're not actively transferring to another bus to pick them up. And we're going to see about maybe improving the infrastructure around these transit hubs. And we also have some data that the state is in contract with all the counties that they can release the data for Strava users. A lot of people use Strava for recreational based usage, to count their miles, calories, or whatever the application does. I do not have it. But
It's a fitness app on your phone like Fitbit, and it's a very popular one. So the DOT figured they could collect us some crowdsourced data, collected by actual users out there in the field. When you use this thing, you automatically update your movements to the cloud if you turn on your locational attributes. And DOT negotiated a backward purchase on our behalf. And I don't know how many counties are using it, but we use it pretty often. It's only going to be good for people who have this app, so that's a very limited number. But we can get an idea of relative use one to another. I'm sorry to butt in here, Jim, but I've been involved with this. I figure I know it a little better than you did.
Yeah, I mean, Andy and Phil were working with GIS and collecting this data and making some maps out of the usage with the Strava app. So this is a little new to me, but what we can do is we can use that and compare the numbers that we gather in these facilities, and compare them to the Strava usage, and we can determine if it's commuter or recreationally based usage.
Yep.
So,
Good point.
but that is, in a nutshell, what our counter program entails. And I mean, if you guys have any questions, feel free to shoot them out.
Bob, could I give you some history on this thing?
Sure.
You know, it's Jason's vision of doing the bridge and the rail trail. When it came out in the newspaper, I got a call one morning from one of our former state representatives. He said, "Joel, what in the world are you people doing out there?" I said, "What?" He said, "I see you spend $4.6 million to build a bridge over I-95 so a bunch of bird watchers can walk across I-95. It's a complete waste of money."
I know who you're probably talking about.
Anyhow, I think he's been proven wrong, and I think more justification for the type of person that Jason was and all of the vision that he had that none of us had to work. It's just been an amazing thing, and anybody that have you ever gone over the thing, it's just awesome. It really is. The chief, I can't walk over it, but the chief drove me over the thing in his pickup truck, and it's just unbelievable.
And Mr. Tyson, it's funny that you mentioned that because there's, the executive roundtable has a 5K, the rail trail 5K that's coming up. We're looking for sponsors if anyone wants to sponsor.
I actually ran the first one.
But it's really fun. We had a ton of people, I mean, we had so many people come out to use it. They were so excited to be a part of a 5K that was using the trail, so it was great.
Another thing is the 392 acres on the east end of where the bridge is there behind Dairy Queen. And they were going to do a housing unit, and they couldn't, and Jason and Mark has been working with the state, with the Florida Land Trust, and they have agreed, I don't think it's completed yet, to buy 340, it's either 340, 360 acres of that land where the bridge comes across, and put that into conservation and have campgrounds. There's a couple of borrow pits there that are already stocked, have recreation facilities and maybe primitive camping and so forth there. So it's, things still growing.
Great. Any other comments or questions for Jim? Okay, great. Appreciate that. Okay, moving on to other business. I had having continuing conversations with Phil regarding news clips that I see on the Florida League of Cities newsletter about e-scooters and shared bikes and so forth. Fort Pierce is in the process of doing an e-scooter program, so it was written up in TC Palm. And so I just asked them to check a little bit as to what they were doing, figuring that it keeps getting closer here. It's up in St. Augustine and other places around in the area, and it's been rolled out in some cases very poorly, in other cases better. So I asked Phil if you could just give a kind of real brief update on it, and then you're going to come back and do a much more involved presentation at some point.
Yeah, sounds good. This was the article the chairman is referring to. Is Fort Pierce ready for e-scooters? You know, nice provocative title. I did a little research. I got a few preliminary answers on their scooter program. I've made copies of a memorandum, sort of a press release put out by the city manager. It's in the back of the room if you're curious about the details of the program. But basically, there's 150 scooters deployed in the initial launch. 75 of them are on the beach, 75 of them are on the mainland. Basically, the biggest issues that we've encountered or heard about or a little concerned about have been addressed via a contract with this company called Zaxter. And Zaxter uses spin cycles. Spin is the manufacturer. It's a division of Ford Motor Company. And the biggest issue that we've had so far has been sort of the chaotic, appearance of these things. They're left willy-nilly, sometimes on sidewalks, no parking areas and all that. And through this contract with Zaxter, they're taking that on head-on. There's a number of ways they're enforcing parking. One thing they're doing is collecting them every night. So this is a picture of a warehouse that they're hosting them in. This way they can maintain them, check the brakes, charge them, and so forth. They have 20 people, according to the newspaper, that work for Zaxter that are in Fort Pierce right now doing all this stuff. So, pretty interesting way to do it. In terms of enforcing parking, you get some information distributed on where to park. This was in the contract, but there's no city ordinance on parking. The downside of not having a city ordinance is the police can't enforce any of these scooter rules. The upside is they're sort of self-enforcing. So when you rent a scooter, when you deploy a scooter, you don't basically punch out of the clock until you take a picture of it and show it where you parked it. So if it's not parked in a convenient area, Zaxter's going to know about it. The next scooter rider can rent the scooter that this person parked, rate the parking job of the previous user. That goes back to Zaxter, and he might have his privileges suspended to rent a scooter again because he didn't leave it in the right area. He left it across the sidewalk or so forth. So that to me was a very innovative feature of this contract. They use geofencing. That's a term that, so that'll be a new one in the dictionary one of these days. So there are no spin zones, no ride zones on these spin cycles. So one of them is the Seaway Causeway. It's a little dangerous. They don't really have a good bike lane or sidewalk on it. So you can't take these scooters from the beach to the city legally. They'll shut off. They just won't let you go there. They have a number of other ride zones. One of the more interesting features for me talking to the project manager yesterday was they have different speed limits which are controlled electronically from the cloud on different scooters. On the beach you can ride them up to 16 miles an hour on bike lanes on A1A. Downtown they can't go past 10 miles an hour. That's because they're cognizant of the fact that there's a lot more activity, doors opening, things like that. So they seem to have taken on some of the concerns and incorporated them into the contract. I'll have a little more information on the whole program, but Generally, you get a lot of disclaimers that you agree to when you rent the scooter, that you are a licensed driver 18 years old or more, and you take a picture of your driver's license to get it. You have to have a credit card to open up an account. That might introduce some sort of equity issue. You're supposed to have a helmet. In none of the pictures in this paper do we see anybody with a helmet. And, you know, don't ride intoxicated and so forth. But, you know, lacking a city ordinance, it's a little bit of an issue for enforcement. This is where you can and can't ride. It's basically everything east of Lawnwood out on 25th Street. So a lot of the residential areas. You know, the project manager told me people are using them kind of innovatively. They see a lot of guys in suits riding them out to lunch from the courthouse, the federal and the downtown courthouse. You know, that's something you kind of see more up north, I guess, in a bigger city. They also said that these are very popular during football games on like Friday night. They have a big parking problem like all the high school football stadiums have. So they're seeing very interesting use. They reported 5,400 rides in the first 2 weeks. So it looks like it's kind of making a dent here. And that's my brief update, and we'll have a little more detail on it in a future meeting.
I would say just something to think about. I mean, we have not had anybody come into the county at this point, but it might be a template for a way to approach it rather than do a resolution or ordinance of some point. I think you can tailor a contract.
Well, Mr. Chairman, it's very timely that you bring this up, and Phil, thank you for the background material. There are 2 501c3s that are considering sponsoring or bringing that type of service here to Indian River County. And whether they be in the municipality, whether they be in Sebastian or Vero Beach, there are already businesses that have bicycles for rent or for loan or lease that they have to retrieve themselves as well when they see some complications. But there is some talk, and there is 2 programs that are well underway as far as ideation. They have the bikes picked out, and they have the stations designed, and they'll be proposing it soon. So, thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Phil, how much did that cost? If they have 20 employees on the ground, and maybe that's not their long-term head count, but boy, that's got to be expensive.
The economics are a bit of a mystery to me. In fact, me and the chair were talking about it a little bit. It's $1 to unlock at the scooter and 15 cents a mile thereafter. So apparently they're making enough money out of 5,400 rides if you costed that out to pay for the employees. They're not 20 full-time employees. I think there's only one full-time employee. Okay. The rest of them are just kids who kind of go out and retrieve them and drop them off. You know, the other side of the economics of this is they had the city, or the county rather, paid the same company through a bid process to deploy e-bikes. So they paid something like $35,000 a year to put these bike stations everywhere as a convenience to people. Due to, you know, questionable usage, I don't know if it was enough usage to justify it or to save money, the county pulled out of it. So the scooter people approached the city, I don't know the exact process, and said, well, look, we can keep the e-bike program going if you'll give us a scooter concession. So nobody's paying anybody at this point. The city's not paying the scooter provider. Scooter provider's not paying money back to the city. They're providing this as the exclusive scooter provider in the city and presumably making a profit from it. The detail, I don't know.
Yeah, I think in terms of the economics of picking them up each night, I've been following this quite a bit, and what they found in other locations is that the e-scooters are just destroyed. There's like Instagram accounts where they have pictures of them being thrown up in trees and other things like that. So I think that capital costs they're picking up. Now, whether they're making money, who the hell knows, but hedge capital, private equity money is just going in these things left and right at amazing rates.
So they're offset with the back-end carbon reduction trading platform to get their money.
Federal investing in the bridge.
Or better bus systems.
Yeah.
Okay, we can move on to the
next item. Next item, this is a report put out by the Texas Transportation Institute, powered by something called INRIX. And this is the first version of this report. They've been doing this for a while now. where they compare congestion in all the major cities in the country. And this is the first one I can recall they did every single urbanized area. And there's almost 500 of them, including us. These are areas of 50,000 people or more at a certain density. So, powered by INRIX, you know, the Seattle Business News calls INRIX the most far-reaching company you never heard of. And if you ever pull up Google Maps and get a traffic report, or you're doing your Waze, or you're doing your navigation system to go to the airport, it might tell you take the turnpike instead of 95. Well, how does it know? Well, there's a predictability to it, plus they're seeing accidents down the street and reporting them back to you and telling you how to go. And they're doing that by purchase data from a fleet of truck vehicles, individual users, certain Bluetooth transactions that go past transponders, and even the navigation companies themselves are reporting the kind of traffic conditions their users are in, and then that's being reported back to other navigation users. So it's sort of a cloud-based system where they're collecting a lot of data constantly. And this data is the key to being able to determine delay one city to another. So taking a look at it, this is just the letter S's that I downloaded from this report, which includes us, because we're the Sebastian Vero Beach urbanized area. You know, I see a couple of trends just looking at this one downloaded report. You know, you've got those in the red, I call them. This is where they rank in population out of the, I think it's 494 urbanized areas, and then where they rank in delay. So some of these Sunbelt cities, Savannah's a good example, some in New York and California, they actually have more delay than they rank in population. And that's really not a good thing. You know, they only rank 143 in Savannah, but they're ranked 111th in the nation in terms of congestion. And then we see some in the middle, here's Shreveport, Spartanburg, they rank about where they rank population-wise. The Rust Belt towns tend to have pretty good driving conditions, and that's because a lot of the population left. And here we see Scranton is 105th in population, but 284th in delay. But to our credit, on this report, we actually punch above our weight a little bit here. Our population, we're 224th largest urbanized area in the country, but 358 for delay. So that's a pretty good thing. And I think you know, I ranked them all statewide too. I'll go to that. And we rank only behind the Villages and Sebring. And I can tell you there's a lot more going on here than in those places, at least healthy activity. And we have 15 hours of delay per driver here. So you do lose, you know, almost 2 days of your life every year if you drive every day. Going slower than you possibly could. That's their measure of delay at the Texas Transportation Institute. Compare that to Miami, where you lose 2 weeks of your life. So that's a pretty interesting little continuum. And then this can settle a lot of bar bets here. What are the worst cities in the country? Maybe I should cover this up. Anyone want to take a guess? Worst congested city in the country?
Atlanta.
Oh, good guess. Not right. Number 7. Number 1 is Los Angeles. Los Angeles and San Francisco, terrible delay in both of these cities, where you lose 2 weeks in Miami. You're looking at almost 3 weeks here of delay, 119 hours. Washington, New York. One interesting phenomenon is places like New York, the congestion's getting worse because people are getting out of the subways and getting onto Ubers and Lyft. So they're coming up now with new ways to tax Uber and Lyft. You know, there's a below, I don't know what it is, 52nd Street or something, financial district. Uber pays an extra like $2 surcharge every time you get on one. So that's a kind of an interesting thing. This is using the same data, which is statistically validated from all the cities, and doing a head-to-head comparison. And then, you know, it kind of got me prompted, wait, why is the Villages, you know, so easy to get around in? So I picked the typical, did a little aerial surveillance with Google Earth, and picked Daryl's Diner, and a company, my favorite name company I think I've ever seen, You Break, I Fix. You know, nice little plaza here. Let's see what it looks like at the ground. Doesn't look that different from us, right? Then I panned across the parking lot and found this. So I can tell you that guy's golf cart there on the left is a lot nicer than my first car. So they have innovated a lot of off-road paths, a lot of golf cart travel and so forth. Probably accounts for its lack of delay. And in quick order here, one more item before we'll send you off on another high note. FDOT commissioned the Center for Urban Transportation Research to do a study of transit MPO coordination. So they took a look at the plans that are adopted and if they're actually being implemented. at different transit systems around the state. Then they followed it up with some survey and interview data, and we got the highest score in the state. So we have a 26 out of 32 coordination scores. So pretty much with that happy note, that's my other business, and
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if there's anything else?
Any comments from the public? Hearing none, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Hey, you got daughters.
Going all over?
It is. Yes, I knew you were president.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
Hey, how are you? Yeah, so I was like,